The Boston Tea Party. A moment etched in the annals of history, a defining act of rebellion that would forever change the course of a nation. This event, on a cold December night in 1773, was more than just a protest against a tax on tea. It was a bold statement, a cry for justice and autonomy from the oppressive grip of British rule. The echoes of that night reverberated through the halls of history, resonating with the spirit of resistance and the unyielding desire for freedom. It was a pivotal moment in the story of the United States, a catalyst that would ignite the flames of revolution and lead to the birth of a new nation. This was not just about tea, it was about freedom. It was about a people who had grown weary of being subjugated, who yearned for the right to govern themselves and to live by their own laws. It was about a people saying no to tyranny, standing up against the injustices imposed upon them, and declaring their right to self-determination. This act of defiance by American colonists against British rule marked a turning point. It was a bold and daring move that demonstrated their resolve and their willingness to fight for their beliefs. It showed the world that the colonists were serious about their desire for liberty. Their actions spoke louder than words, sending a clear message that they would no longer be silenced or oppressed. It was a spark that ignited a revolution that would see the birth of a new nation, founded on the principles of freedom, equality, and justice, leading to the birth of a new nation. A nation that would stand as a beacon of hope and liberty for people around the world, a testament to the power of the human spirit and the enduring quest for freedom. The Boston Tea Party was more than just an event. It was a symbol of defiance, of courage, and of the unbreakable will of a people determined to be free. It brought together individuals from all walks of life, united in their common cause. Farmers, merchants, artisans, and laborers all stood side by side, driven by a shared vision of a better future. Families dreamed of a land where their children could grow up free from oppression, where they could pursue their dreams and live in peace. Leaders strategized and planned, knowing that their actions would have far-reaching consequences. They were willing to risk everything for the chance to create a new world. The revolution that followed was hard-fought and fraught with challenges. But the spirit of the Boston Tea Party endured. It inspired countless acts of bravery and sacrifice as the colonists fought for their independence. And in the end, their perseverance paid off. The United States of America emerged as a new nation, a testament to the power of unity, determination, and the unyielding quest for freedom. Today, we remember the Boston Tea Party not just as a historical event, but as a powerful reminder of what can be achieved when people come together to stand up for what is right. It serves as an enduring lesson for future generations, a call to action to always fight for justice, equality, and freedom. The legacy of the Boston Tea Party lives on, a symbol of the enduring spirit of defiance and the unbreakable will of a people determined to be free. To understand the Boston Tea Party, we must go back. We must understand the growing tension between Great Britain and its American colonies. After the costly French and Indian War, Britain was in debt. It decided to impose taxes on the colonies to recover its losses. The colonists saw this as unfair. They argued that they had no representation in the British Parliament, they had no say in the laws imposed upon them. Their cry became, "No taxation without representation." This principle became a cornerstone of their fight for independence. The Tea Act of 1773 proved to be the breaking point. This act aimed to help the struggling British East India Company. It granted the company a monopoly on tea sales in the colonies. This meant colonists could only buy tea from them, even if it was more expensive. The colonists saw this as a blatant attempt to control their economy. They boycotted British tea. They formed committees to prevent its importation. The stage was set for a confrontation. The arrival of the tea ships would be the catalyst. In late November and early December of 1773, several ships laden with tea arrived in Boston Harbor. These ships, carrying over 90,000 pounds of tea, became potent symbols of British oppression. The colonists, however, were determined to resist this oppression. They refused to allow the tea to be unloaded from the ships. They demanded that the ships return to England immediately. The atmosphere in Boston was extremely tense. Both sides stood their ground, unwilling to back down or compromise. The fate of the tea and perhaps the future of the colonies hung in the balance. Section 5. A City on Edge. The standoff in Boston Harbor. Boston, a city bustling with colonial activity, found itself at the heart of a brewing conflict. The harbor, usually a symbol of commerce and prosperity, now stood as a battleground of ideologies and wills. For weeks the standoff continued. The ships, laden with tea, remained anchored, their cargo untouched. The waters of the harbor mirrored the growing unrest on the streets. The once peaceful waterfront now echoed with the murmurs of discontent and the whispers of rebellion. The colonists held meetings and rallies debating their next move. In taverns and town halls, voices rose in heated discussions. The air was thick with the scent of ale and the fervor of revolution. Each meeting brought forth new ideas, new strategies, and a renewed sense of purpose. They were determined not to pay the tea tax. To them, it was more than just a financial burden. It was a matter of principle. The tax represented an overreach of British power, a direct challenge to their autonomy and rights as Englishmen. They saw it as a symbol of British tyranny. The tea, though seemingly innocuous, had become a potent symbol of oppression. The colonists viewed it as a tangible representation of their subjugation, a daily reminder of their lack of representation in the British Parliament. They believed that yielding to this act would set a dangerous precedent. If they accepted this tax, what would stop the British from imposing more? The fear of a slippery slope loomed large, and the colonists were determined to draw a line in the sand. The British authorities, however, refused to budge. To them, the tax was a legitimate exercise of their right to govern the colonies. They saw the colonists' defiance as a direct challenge to their authority, one that needed to be quashed to maintain order and control. They insisted that the tea be unloaded and the taxes paid. Orders were given and soldiers were dispatched to ensure compliance. The docks, once a place of trade and camaraderie, now bristled with tension and the presence of armed men. Governor Hutchinson, determined to assert British authority, ordered the ships not to leave without unloading their cargo. His resolve was unyielding, his orders clear. The ships would remain and the tea would be unloaded no matter the cost. The tension in Boston grew thicker by the day. The streets, once filled with the sounds of daily life, now buzzed with the undercurrent of impending conflict. Neighbors whispered in hushed tones, and every glance carried the weight of uncertainty. The city stood on the brink, each day bringing it closer to a breaking point. Section 6. The Sons of Liberty make their move. Amid the growing tension, a group of determined colonists decided to take action. They called themselves the Sons of Liberty. They were committed to resisting British rule and its unfair policies. They believed in freedom and were willing to fight for it. The Sons of Liberty planned a daring act of defiance. They decided to destroy the tea shipments. They believed this would send a strong message to Great Britain. They wanted to show the world that they would not be oppressed by tyranny. Section 7. December 16, 1773. The night of the Boston Tea Party. On the night of December 16, 1773, a group of colonists disguised as Native Americans boarded the tea ships. They moved swiftly and silently. They dumped 342 chests of tea into the harbor. The tea, worth thousands of British pounds, floated in the water. This act of defiance, the Boston Tea Party, became a defining moment in American history. It was a turning point that pushed the colonies closer to revolution. Section 8. A Nation Divided: Reactions to the Tea Party. The Boston Tea Party was a pivotal moment in American history, one that would forever alter the course of the colonies and their relationship with Great Britain. The Boston Tea Party shocked the world. News of the event spread like wildfire, reaching every corner of the colonies and even crossing the Atlantic to Britain. The audacity of the colonists to destroy an entire shipment of tea in protest was unprecedented. In the colonies, many celebrated the act. It was seen as a bold statement against the oppressive policies of the British government. Townsfolk gathered in public squares, cheering and toasting to what they saw as a victory for liberty and justice. They saw it as a blow against tyranny. Colonial leaders gave passionate speeches, rallying the people to the cause of independence. They believed that this act of defiance would inspire others to stand up against British rule. Others, however, worried about the consequences. They feared British retaliation. The destruction of the tea was a direct challenge to British authority, and many colonists were anxious about the potential repercussions. They knew that the British government would not take this act lightly. In Britain, the reaction was one of outrage. The British government and the public were incensed by the news. Newspapers ran headlines condemning the actions of the colonists, and there was a general sense of disbelief that such an event could occur. The king and parliament saw it as an act of rebellion. King George III and his ministers were particularly furious. They viewed the Boston Tea Party as a direct affront to their authority and a dangerous precedent that could not be allowed to stand. They vowed to punish the colonists. Plans were quickly set in motion to respond to the defiance. The British government decided to implement harsh measures to reassert control over the colonies and to make an example of those involved in the Boston Tea Party. The fragile relationship between Great Britain and the colonies was shattered. The trust and cooperation that had once existed were now replaced by suspicion and hostility. The colonies began to see themselves as separate from Britain, and the idea of independence started to take root. The Boston Tea Party had set in motion a chain of events that would lead to war. The colonies began to prepare for the possibility of armed conflict. Militias were formed and leaders met in secret to discuss strategies. The stage was set for the Revolutionary War, a conflict that would ultimately lead to the birth of a new nation.